Welcome. This week's topic is the South and slavery. Some of you may be wondering, okay, why was the South so happy to have slavery, or why was the South so dependent on slavery? The answer goes back to the colonial days and to the very first European settlers that came to the South. Even if you go back to Virginia, when they settled there, the first thing that they were successful with was tobacco. And tobacco grew well in the South, not so well in the North. They tended to have bigger tobacco farms where it was impossible to work the entire farm with just one family. So you needed help. And eventually they turned to slavery. That didn't happen in the North. They had the smaller family farms, and they tended to grow more things that you actually eat and that you need. So there was a difference there. There was a need for the labor in the South, and it was cheap. And really, what made slavery boom in the South was the invention of the cotton gin by Eli Whitney. And the cotton gin is short for cotton engine. And what it did was it separated the sticky seeds that were in the cotton ball away from the cotton so that it could be processed and made it so much easier. Before that, the slaves would have to sit there and pick the seeds out themselves. And so with the cotton gin, you could process the cotton much faster, and that meant less work for the slaves. And instead of going, oh, well, hey, maybe we can reduce the number of slaves we have, the answer was, no, it just means you can plant more land because they can handle more. So the U.S. land expansion that happened, up until 1848 really opened up a whole bunch of land in the West and in the Southwest that would be perfect or would be good for growing cotton. So it seemed like there were endless opportunities to be able to do that. And there was a global demand for cotton. The South exported a lot of cotton to other countries, and in fact, cotton was the leading export in the United States for quite some time. So it was economic. What are the consequences? Well, the South sort of took the thought that we're making money making cotton and growing cotton. So why should we try anything else? If it's not broke, don't fix it. We can keep making money growing cotton and do what we know and call it good. So while the North was busy very quickly industrializing and going in different directions, the South kind of stayed where they were. And in fact, and they lagged behind in industrialization. It's not as though the South was not industrialized at all, it's just that they lagged behind. And interestingly, a lot of the cotton was sent to the northern factories to get processed. So there wasn't a whole lot of places to turn into actual, cloth in the South. So again, something just to keep in mind. Also, the South was more rural than the North because of it, because you need more farms and things like that to get the cotton grown, and you don't need the cities that the North had. It also divided the country economically, because in the North you've got the factories and the hustle and the bustle and the businesses and the smaller farms, and in the South you've got a slower lifestyle, the bigger farms, the plantations, slavery, definitely not as much business and hustle and bustle. So it was very divided economically. And for the South, it was simply a way of life. It was, by the mid-1800s, it was what you had grown up with. It was what you knew. There were slaves there, and it's just what you did, and it was the way of the world. Eventually, that's going to be a real big social divide as well. Long story short, by the 1860s, when the North is saying, we should probably get rid of slavery, the North feels economically threatened because they believe they need the slaves for their major economic output, which is cotton. They feel socially threatened that the South wants to just sort of get rid of the North wants to get rid of the South's way of life completely. They feel politically threatened that they're going to be outnumbered, and they may be forced to get rid of it against their will. So it's an interesting time there, and as the decades go by, the divide between the North and South only gets worse and worse. hopefully that explains that whole situation. And if, as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.